Hello, and welcome to Books in the World. I'm your host, Kathleen Murphy. Books in the World is an interview show produced by the Cape Cod Writers Center and the Cape Media Center. The Writers Center was established 60 years ago and sponsors a 4-day writers conference right here on Cape Cod. The goal of Books in the World is to show how writers, illustrators, publishers, editors, and others in the literary field play their roles in the world of books and other communication media. This show has been broadcast continuously since 1978, making it the longest-running program of its kind in the United States. Today we are delighted to welcome Peggy Jablonski, author of the book Cape Cod Camino Way, Walking with a Purpose. Welcome, Peggy.
Thank you, Kathleen. It's wonderful to be here today.
Glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Peggy has over 4 decades of experience as a leader in higher education, and she understands firsthand the power of coaching. As a senior administrator at universities such as Brown, MIT, and the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, Peggy has guided diverse and complex organizations to meet the ever-changing needs of students, parents, and faculty. She's developed policy, strategic plans, and organizational assessments. She's managed complex building projects and handled every kind of emergency. Then, she knew it was time for a change in her life. Preparing for her next chapter, Peggy took an adult gap year, immersing herself in cross-cultural experiences to learn more about the changing nature of leadership in the 21st century. During that year, she worked with a coach to integrate her experiences and then earned her own coaching certifications from the Gestalt International Study Center and the Gallup Organization. Experience taught her about the mind-body connection in leadership, so she became a certified yoga instructor and studied mindfulness meditation and other wellness practices. Coaching has since transformed her life and career, which brings us to her most recent project and book, The Cape Cod Camino Way, Walking with a Purpose. Peggy has created a series of informative walks that wind through the 15 towns of Cape Cod. Along the way, a walker can learn about diverse individuals and groups and that have significantly influenced Cape Cod. Peggy uses her coaching skills and talent for raising awareness to help us understand current social issues from local perspective, including racial justice, discrimination, and more. And I am really looking forward to talking with her about all of this. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I look forward to going on a journey around Cape Cod with you.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that sounds great. I'm looking forward to it too. That'll be fun. What motivated you to write this book in the first place?
Well, it stems from wanting to explore issues of racial and social justice going on in our country. Mm-hmm. And I usually travel outside the country 1 or 2 times a year. Mm-hmm. And I had thought about hiking the Camino Way in Spain, which is an ancient pilgrimage route.
Right.
And so I tied those things together and I thought, what is happening right here on Cape Cod in my own vicinity that I could explore and find more out about and then help share that with others, because I am an educator at heart.
Right.
So I took the peninsula of the Cape and mapped out an experience that took the summer of 2020 to complete.
So it's kind of like there's very large issues that are going on in the world, and instead of trying to address the large issues from a world position, you're saying, why don't we address them from the perspective of right here in our own neighborhood, right here on Cape Cod?
Right. I mean, if you think about it, you can get pretty easily overwhelmed with the onslaught of all the news every day and social media and just trying to have conversations with your family and friends. So instead, not instead of, but in collaboration with doing that, to explore what is in your backyard, people, places, stories, helps you ground yourself and engage in the difficult conversations from a more place of being centered.
Yes.
And just having a little more knowledge about what's right around you that can help support your learning.
Yeah, and it's less intimidating.
Much less intimidating.
Because you're right there. It's right in front of you, or there's a statue, or there's a monument, or there's
people that you're interacting with
exactly.
who are different than you.
Exactly.
Right.
So tell me, how would you describe this book? How did you come up with the chapters and the process for writing this book?
Right. Well, it stems back to having a summer of walking. So each week I would put together the sites we were going to go to check out, and I'd map out a route up to 15 miles, and we would walk every Wednesday, 12 to 15 miles. And so I had a lot of information from websites, from interviewing people who were the heads of different organizations or the sites we were going to see. And so at the end of the summer, I realized I had this massive amount of information about walking Cape Cod, but by extension, looking at issues of racial and social justice. And I thought, I think I need to turn this into a book. And so I was able to sequester myself for 8 weeks. My deal with myself was, you can go to Florida and spend 2 months in the winter there, but you have to write a chapter every week.
Oh, wow.
And so before I would go out on the golf course, I had to write my chapter. So I was able to do that, 8 chapters, and then did the intro. And the end of the book is about my journey back.
Right.
So I did the same thing, plotting out sites on the way back, and did a civil rights, Civil War history tour.
Right. Okay, so first of all, you're a golfer, so you are a big walker. And when I was reading especially the first couple of chapters in the book, I was like, she's walking like 14 or 15 miles a day on this thing. And as I understand you structured it like every Thursday.
Yes, so what we did, if we think back to the summer of COVID, you really couldn't stay places. So I didn't want to do things sequentially and in case people joined me. And I was lucky to have over 43 people that summer join me for some part of these walks. One woman walked all 8 weeks with me. And so what I chose to do was, I'd put out the information on Monday, we're going to meet here, it's going to be 12 miles, the halfway point will be this park, in case someone wanted to join midway. And I would tell them the 2 or 3 sites and the theme that we were going to focus on that week. Healthcare, the environment, policing, women and people of color in science. Whatever, and the themes somewhat grew out of the roots, because they matched up with, so women and people of color in science, that took in Woods Hole.
Oh, right, okay,
And I interviewed some of the women scientists there, dove into what they're doing around diversity and inclusion, and had this whole experience around Rachel Carson and the statue there. But I didn't know the statue was there before I went there.
Oh, okay, I thought
so
that
that's
it was
kind of what happens. You would be open to adjusting along the way based on what you saw or who was with you and interacted with you.
Oh, okay. I kind of thought that you had an idea of what you were going to do, because there were some areas, some walks that you were not familiar with then. You hadn't done.
I had not done at all. In some places I had not been. Another example of that would be, we walked from the Mashpee Wampanoag Museum in Mashpee all the way over to the Zion Union Heritage Museum in Hyannis. I had never been to either museum, and both of them are spectacular and tell the stories of people of color in different ways, different perspectives. And that was just such a rich experience to do that on one 13, 14-mile walk.
But if I remember, that was a rainy day.
That was a tough day. It was a rainy day, and it also was the day that I experienced personally with my family being racially profiled on a walk.
Yeah.
So I'll just share with you
Yeah,
briefly
please, tell us
that,
about that.
my brother is married to a woman from Trinidad, and I have an almost 8-year-old niece. And so we were all walking together, 3 or 4 of us in our T-shirts. So we kind of looked like a group tour, but we stopped for a water break, and we were then asked by a group of landscapers, what were we doing here? Like,
At first, it seems
at
like
first
you didn't
I thought,
think anything
no,
of it.
at first I thought they thought we were lost and were trying to be helpful. But my brother explained to me after that his family gets that kind of pushback or confrontation, attention. And he said, you realize we were just racially profiled because there's people of color with us.
Right.
And then I went off by myself walking for a little bit to process that.
Yeah.
And that relates to it being a pilgrimage that each week I would try to weave in experiences where, so if we heard church bells ringing, we would stop, integrate what we were learning, what we were experiencing. I would do some yoga poses at the beginning and at the end. And at the end of each walk, we also did what are our key takeaways today in learning, so that whoever was there, whether it was 2 people or 10, we would all share what the experience was. And that was really powerful to hear.
So
some
sharing
of
on that particular day when someone that you love has been kind of singled out in a way that was not, probably not, or maybe not, in a kind way, maybe in a suspicious way.
in a suspicious
You know, what's
kinda
going on
way.
here
Yeah,
way.
it just made me more
And your niece
aware.
is 8 years old.
Right, 7 or 6 at the time. And so it just made me more empathetic towards what they deal with when they travel.
Right. Right.
And that relates to another story that the head of the Zion Museum, John Reed, who's also the past president of the NAACP for Cape Cod,
wow.
he told us when we went to visit the museum what it was like for him as a black man driving on 6A at night. I had never thought of what that might be for a person of color. And so to hear that was jarring, but it also just made me more understanding that people have different experiences on our roadways based on their gender, their skin color, et cetera.
A first person kind of experience of kind of walking in their shoes.
Exactly.
And in this case, driving in their car.
Exactly.
Right.
And so by doing that walk that week and meeting him, I was able to have that conversation with him and make a deeper connection.
So you modeled this a little bit after the the Camino de Santiago, which is in Spain and in some parts of Europe. So what is it when people go on these long pilgrimages? What do you think that they're hoping to accomplish? I mean, obviously with this one, you did accomplish something. You got an insight on one of your fellow walkers' experiences firsthand. But what else do you think it is that people wish to accomplish when they take a pilgrimage? Why do they do them?
Well, the pilgrimages around the world basically started with a religious context for them. So in the case of the Camino in Spain, it's to arrive at Santiago de Compostela and be able to complete an experience that tests you and then reaffirms your faith. Right now, there's preparations for the Hajj happening in Saudi Arabia, et cetera. So these happen all over the world and in across different religions. I've done some pilgrimage routes in Ireland that actually were based on more pagan sites and rituals.
So that's 3 religions that you've just mentioned there that are tied into a pilgrimage.
Right.
The Camino Santiago is more of a Christian based.
Correct.
And it sounds like this Ireland one was pagan.
More pagan,
And
yeah.
the Hajj that you mentioned earlier is a Muslim based.
Correct.
It's going through different sites like Mecca to experience that reawakening or maybe reaffirming of faith.
Right. It's both an internal experience and an external one, because you're engaging with the space wherever you are and the people around you.
Right.
But you're also going internal, and in the case of the Camino Way for Cape Cod,
Right.
I was trying to explore where I'm at in terms of about a 60-year-old white woman, and what does that mean in this society at a time when, you know, many black people were being killed in our police situations. And I have many police in my family. I've worked with college police. I'm very much supportive of the work that they do.
Right.
And I wanted to understand, why is this still happening
Right.
and exploding and happening more?
Right.
And so I had to go both internal
Yeah.
and external. And
Yeah.
that's what pilgrimage is all about.
Right.
And then it's also about, what do you do when you get back home, or when the experience is done?
Right.
How do you integrate it and have your worldview be changed?
Be broadened.
Be broadened.
During
be
a
more,
pandemic.
Right. Be more open and aware. I just keep saying it's all about awareness,
Yeah.
right? Which stems back to some of the yoga and Buddhist principles of, you know, mindfulness and awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Camino Way, the Cape Cod Camino Way, is not religious-based. Instead
No.
of using it as an awakening for religion, you're trying to make it an awakening for empathy for other groups, other people, people that are not you, regardless of
Right.
who you are.
Right.
People that are not you.
Correct. And also, just whose stories have I not heard yet that I need to hear about here on Cape Cod? So,
Yeah.
for example, when I ran into the Rachel Carson statue, and we had just passed the Kathy Lee Bates statue in
Falmouth.
Falmouth, and I dove into the words related to America the Beautiful, it came up that maybe there's some original language here that might be problematic,
Yeah.
given today's understanding
Right.
of how we look at issues.
Right.
Same thing if you look back at our founding documents. The words merciless savages is in our Declaration of Independence. So I read that the week of the 4th of July while we were walking, and said, okay, what do we need to understand about that now,
Right.
as we're trying to understand this Mayflower story,
Right.
and the Pilgrims and their connection with the native
Right.
culture here on Cape Cod.
Right.
It all tied together.
It's amazing.
And it was right there.
Yeah.
It was like right there in front of us that we
Fantastic.
had to confront it.
Yeah.
And Hamilton was out, the play
that's right.
Hamilton.
Yeah, yeah.
So we were able to quote some of the songs from there. And
Right.
you know, I tried to do each week in an engaging way. So I would use poetry, I would use music or artwork.
Something that would prompt a
Something-
reaction
right.
or a
An
conversation.
awareness,
An
right.
awareness about it, yeah. So that was the planning that you did. So I think when I was reading this book, I thought of it as almost a guide. And with everything that has been going on, the pandemic, the Black Lives Matter, politics that are
elections, yeah.
inflammatory, right? And
Right.
many of these issues are still going on. But I felt like this was almost a suggestion or a guide to help people to process, because you're seeing things that are happening right in your own hometown, and you're talking about issues that are in your hometown, but also in a broader audience.
Right.
So I talk a little bit more about some of the triggers and maybe some of the things that surprised you as you were planning your walks, because it's you were started in the Falmouth area, the Upper Cape area.
I started at the canals,
started at
walking
the
both
canals. That's where it
sides of
was.
the
Yeah.
canals, right?
Yeah.
So a couple of things there. So one is, at the end of each chapter, I decided, okay, I reported on what we did, but now let me help other people do a similar experience.
Yes.
So I give examples of places where people can go to discover, again, events, stories, or meet people. And so I wove that in at each chapter.
And I appreciate that in your own experience, you might have been walking the 13 or 14 miles, and it might have been through the rain or so on, but that the suggestions that you make at the back for people, if they want to approach it themselves, it's a shorter walk, and generally it might not have sidewalks, but you can drive it.
You can drive and just go to these certain sites, you know.
Right.
So one thing when you say what surprised you, so I'll give two quick examples. One would be related to women. I knew this from being an undergraduate history major, American history major, that women's stories were absent from most of the history books.
Right.
And so I was able to I tried to each week find something on the walk that related to women. So again, the stories of women scientists over in Woods Hole, or on 6A, discovering Mercy Otis Warren. I knew of Mercy Otis Warren a little bit, but then I delved into her life and her background and was just astounded that she interacted with many of our founding fathers, both
Continued
Adams,
correspondence
exactly,
with
Jefferson,
President,
Washington, everyone,
Yeah.
and we don't know about her in our history.
Exactly. We need a movie about
so
her.
Yes,
We need a
we
movie about
do.
her.
That would be great.
I might even know some people that could do that.
There you go. So that was one example I'd give. And then another is related to the walking experience itself. There were not sidewalks in many places. And so when I think about how accessible is Cape Cod or anywhere, because that happened to me at Chapel Hill when I had my leg in a cast and couldn't get around. You know, there were miles that we walked on Route 28 without a sidewalk. Well, I don't recommend anybody do that. And it made me just more, again, compassionate to what people who have an ability issue need to do to navigate our spaces. And we just need to continue to make all of our public spaces more accessible.
I like your thinking process. So you go through an experience and then it kind of, you're leading by example. So I can picture you on your walk saying, well, okay, well, this happened. Let's talk about that for a second. So
exactly.
I like that. Yeah. I like that.
And then other people would notice things that I didn't notice. And so that was helpful for the overall learning experience.
So everyone
for
felt as though they
everyone.
were contributing as well if they were on the walk with you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you're still doing these walks?
So yes, I am. So I've shortened them. Most of them are 1 to 2 miles. And then this summer, I'm in partnership with the JFK Museum in Hyannis. Wendy Northcross wanted to start a walking program there. And she had read the book and she said, this is exactly what we need to do. And it's, so we, every Wednesday morning for about 90 minutes, and we go various sites in downtown Hyannis, but it weaves in the Kennedy story, not just JFK, but all the Kennedys, many of the Kennedys who had connections to the economy, civil rights, Special Olympics, Peace Corps, space program, et cetera.
Talk about broad horizons.
Exactly. And then every Saturday morning, I still do the Brewster Walk, which is my hometown. And that's where I became really fully immersed in our connection with the triangle trade and the institution of slavery. That could be a whole nother discussion someday.
But very quickly, the triangle trade has to do with the trade of slaves, sugar, and rum around the Atlantic seaboard.
Pretty much, yeah. I like to categorize it as goods, services, and products between us, Africa, the Caribbean, and back up. And people of color, blacks from Africa, were part of that taken and ended up in the Caribbean. And it was this was the most mind-blowing thing for me to understand. It was our dried codfish that helped feed the enslaved populations in the Caribbean. And I had been to some of those plantations on vacations, on trips.
And you think it's not close
didn't
to you.
think anything of the connection right here to our sea captains.
Right.
You know, throughout
And there are
Cape
amazing,
Cod.
amazing connections.
That's not to
exactly.
say all sea captains engaged in that trade at all,
course.
but I think if we can just understand, acknowledge. I once met Archbishop Desmond Tutu at Chapel Hill, and he said to us at dinner, until you are able to confront your past, you will be unable to move into your future. And that's what I think we're trying to do with these walks, but also with everyone trying to understand and integrate our history in a different way.
In a different way, so
Yeah.
that we don't keep repeating the same mistakes.
Exactly, exactly.
So good. So, so good. All right, so you're continuing to do the walks.
Yes.
And how is it that we sign up for them?
So thank you. So please go to the website, CapeCodCaminoWay.com.
Okay.
And you'll find the walks there. And I'm going to add in Provincetown in the fall.
Okay. Oh, great.
Yeah,
Good.
that'll be good.
And how was real quick, we just have a little bit left, was the writing and publishing process, it sounds like you had help with it. It was pretty simple, or?
Well, part of it was simple because I just decided to bite the bullet and self-publish it.
Right,
And
okay.
so I did hire an editor.
Yep.
I highly recommend hiring an editor for any writers.
Right.
It's worth the investment. As I say, there is no good writing, there's only good rewriting.
There you go.
And I hired another person to help me lay it all out because there's lots of charts and photos and text boxes, and I wanted to make sure that that was correct.
Yeah.
So I focused on the actual writing
Yes.
and the learning component of it,
Right.
and then had help from others.
All right, well, it's come out very good. It's a very good book. It's a
Thank
guide.
you.
It really is a guide, and it's contemplative and it's constructive, and I really enjoyed it. Your website, one more time.
CapeCodCaminoWay.com.
Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Oh my God, thank you for having me today. This has been wonderful.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
Thank you.
So this book is a great guide for taking walks all over Cape Cod, but not only in your own shoes, also in someone else's. Someone you may not know well, but maybe you should. If you've enjoyed this video and would like to see more, you'll find links to them through our website, CapeCodWritersCenter.org, through our Facebook page, and on YouTube. Thank you again for watching Books in the World.